When we reflect on the human condition, one of the most fascinating psychological realities is how deeply we believe we have time. We plan years ahead. We plan careers, businesses, retirements, and futures that stretch decades forward. And there is nothing inherently wrong with planning. Islam does not prohibit planning for the future. But the problem begins when planning turns into an illusion of permanence when the human heart quietly convinces itself that tomorrow is guaranteed. Every one of us intellectually knows that life is temporary. If I ask anyone in this room, is life short? Everyone will nod. If I ask, will we all die one day, and no one will disagree, these are truths we acknowledge with our minds. But the deeper question is this, do we live as if we truly believe it? Because the reality is that most people do not. Human beings possess an incredible ability to delay what matters most. We delay difficult conversations. We delay personal change, and most dangerously, we delay repentance. A person tells himself, I will become more serious about my faith later. Let me first establish my career. Let me enjoy my youth. Let me settle down. Let me reach a certain stage of life. And before he realizes it, years have passed. This is one of the quiet tricks of the human psyche. The mind constantly pushes responsibility into the future. Psychologists call this temporal distancing the tendency to treat future consequences as less urgent than present comfort. Spiritually speaking, this becomes a dangerous trap, because while we postpone change, time itself is not postponing anything Time is moving forward relentlessly. Every sunrise is not simply the beginning of another day. It is also the subtraction of another day from our lives. Every year that passes is not merely growth in age. It is a step closer to the moment when our story in this world concludes. And yet, look at how we behave. We speak about death as if it belongs to other people. We hear about funerals, tragedies, and sudden losses, and for a brief moment we feel a sense of reflection. But very quickly the mind protects itself by saying, that was someone else, that was their story, not mine. But the reality is simple and undeniable. Every funeral we attend is a reminder of our own future. The day of judgment may seem distant when we think about the end of the world. It may feel like a cosmic event far beyond our lifetime. But what many people forget is that the doorway to that day begins with our own death. The moment our life ends, the waiting period begins. In that sense, the countdown toward accountability is not measured by the lifespan of the universe. It is measured by the lifespan of our own soul in this world. And this realization changes everything, because if a person truly understands that time is limited, priorities begin to shift. Petty conflicts lose their importance. Arrogance begins to feel foolish. Sins that once felt small begin to carry weight. And acts of goodness, smiling at someone, giving charity, making a sincere prayer suddenly feel more meaningful. When a person understands that life is temporary, every moment becomes valuable. Islam does not ask us to abandon the world. It asks us to live in the world with awareness, to build, to work, to succeed, but to never forget that this life is not the final destination. It is the examination hall before the results are announced. And perhaps the most dangerous thought a human being can entertain is this simple sentence, I still have time, because the truth is, none of us knows how much time remains. And that is why the wise person does not wait for the perfect moment to change. The wise person understands that the moment we are living right now is the only moment we are guaranteed asterisk asterisk. If time is the most precious gift Allah has given us, then the greatest tragedy is not losing wealth or status. It is asterisk asterisk losing time without preparing for what comes after it asterisk asterisk. If we continue reflecting on this idea of time and accountability, we must confront another reality that many people prefer not to think about. When we speak about the Day of Judgment, we often imagine a distant event, the collapse of the universe, the blowing of the trumpet, humanity gathered on a vast plain waiting for judgment. It feels cosmic, massive, almost unimaginable, and because it feels so distant, the human mind subconsciously places it far away in the future. But Islamic teachings remind us of something profound. Our personal journey toward judgment does not begin when the world ends. It begins the moment asterisk asterisk our life ends asterisk asterisk. Death is not simply the conclusion of biological life. In the Islamic worldview, death is the doorway to another phase of existence. It is the transition from the temporary world into the reality that leads directly to ultimate accountability. In other words, while the final day of judgment is a universal event for all humanity, every individual experiences the beginning of that journey through death. And this realization changes how we think about the urgency of preparation. Because when we attend a funeral, what we are witnessing is not just the end of someone's life story in this world. We are witnessing the beginning of their encounter with the consequences of that life. The grave, in Islamic tradition, is not simply a resting place for the body. It is described as the first station of the hereafter. The Prophet letter Fdfa described the grave in a way that is both sobering and deeply reflective. It is either a garden from the gardens of paradise or a pit from the pits of hell. That description alone forces a person to pause and reflect on the meaning of life itself. Because if the grave is the first step of the hereafter, then our daily actions in this world are not small or temporary. They are shaping the reality we will face in that next stage, and this leads us to an important psychological question. Why do human beings avoid thinking about death? Part of the answer lies in fear. Death reminds us that we are not in control. It reminds us that our plans, ambitions, and routines can be interrupted at any moment. Another reason is distraction. Modern life is filled with noise, constant entertainment, endless information, and a pace that rarely allows for deep reflection. Thinking about mortality requires silence and honesty, two things people often avoid, but the Islamic tradition approaches death differently. Rather than treating it as a morbid topic to avoid, it treats it as a source of clarity. Remembering death is meant to sharpen our perspective. It removes the illusion that this world is permanent and reminds us that our choices matter. When a person reflects on death properly, it does not make them hopeless. In fact, it does the opposite. It makes them purposeful. They begin to ask themselves deeper questions. What am I truly living for? What kind of legacy am I building? If my life ended tonight, would I feel ready to meet my Creator? These are not questions meant to cause despair. They are questions meant to awaken the conscience, because the truth is that death is not selective in the way we often imagine. It does not come only to the elderly or the sick. History and experience show us again and again that death visits the young and the old, the wealthy and the poor, the strong and the weak. It arrives without appointment, without warning, and without negotiation. And when that moment arrives, everything that once felt so urgent in this world suddenly becomes irrelevant. Titles, possessions, social status, none of these things accompany us into the grave. What remains are our deeds, our intentions, and our relationship with Allah. This is why reflecting on death is not meant to paralyze us. It is meant to guide us. It reminds us that the real measure of success is not how long we lived, but how we lived ***. And perhaps the most powerful truth we must remember is this: the day of judgment may feel far away, but for each one of us, the first step toward that day begins the moment our final breath leaves our body. So the question is not whether we will face that reality. The question is whether we will be ready when it begins. As we continue reflecting on the reality of accountability, there is another dimension that our tradition constantly reminds us about: the signs that point toward the approaching end of history. When we speak about the day of judgment, we are not speaking about something that arrives without warning. Islamic teachings make it very clear that before the final hour arrives, there will be signs, indicators that gradually appear within human society. These signs were described centuries ago, yet when we observe the world today, many of them feel strikingly familiar. Now it is important to understand something here. The purpose of these signs is not simply to create curiosity or speculation. Unfortunately, many people approach the topic of the end times like a puzzle or a conspiracy theory, trying to match every news headline with a prophecy. But the purpose of these signs was never meant to turn believers into detectives of global events. Their purpose was something far more meaningful, to awaken moral awareness, Because when the Prophet spoke about the signs of the end, many of them were not cosmic disasters. They were social and moral transformations. He spoke about a time when honesty would become rare, a time when trust would disappear from society, a time when people would compete in wealth but neglect compassion, a time when knowledge would exist, yet wisdom would be scarce, a time when truth would become blurred and confusion would spread among people. If we look carefully, we begin to notice that the greatest crises of our era are not technological or economic. Humanity has never been more advanced in science, communication, and infrastructure. Yet at the same time, many societies are struggling with deep moral confusion. People are searching for meaning in a world that often prioritizes consumption over purpose. This is one of the paradoxes of modern life. We have more comfort than many generations before us, yet many people feel more spiritually empty. We have constant connection through technology, yet loneliness and anxiety are increasing. We have endless information, yet many struggle to find clarity about what truly matters. And when Islamic teachings mention signs like widespread injustice, moral uncertainty, and the normalization of wrongdoing, they are not simply predicting chaos. They are describing a spiritual imbalance that emerges when humanity loses its connection to divine guidance. But again, the purpose of recognizing these signs is not to panic. It is to reflect. Think about it this way: imagine driving on a long road and seeing warning signs ahead, curves, obstacles, or approaching danger. Those signs are not placed there to frighten the driver. They are there to help the driver prepare and adjust before reaching the critical point. In the same way, the signs of the end are reminders placed along the journey of history. They remind believers that the world is moving toward a conclusion, that the story of humanity will one day reach its final chapter. And perhaps the most powerful lesson here is this: when societies begin to lose their moral direction, it becomes even more important for individuals to strengthen their own character and faith. Because while we cannot control the entire world, we are responsible for the world within our own hearts. The signs of the end times should therefore push us toward deeper sincerity. They should motivate us to seek knowledge, to strengthen our relationship with Allah, and to become people who bring integrity, compassion, and justice into their communities. In other words, when darkness spreads, the believer does not surrender to it. The believer becomes a source of light. And perhaps that is the deeper wisdom behind these signs. They remind us that history is moving forward, that the final meeting with Allah is inevitable, and that every generation is being tested in its own unique way. The question is not whether the signs are appearing around us. The real question is whether they are awakening something *** within us ***, a sense of urgency, sincerity, and readiness for the moment when the truth of this world will finally be revealed. As we reflect on the signs around us and the reality that history itself is moving toward a final moment of accountability, we must also confront a deeply personal truth about our lives. Nothing we do is ever truly lost. Every action, every word, every intention, no matter how small, carries weight beyond what we can see in this world. One of the most powerful concepts in Islam is the idea that our lives are being recorded with absolute precision. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, but literally. The Qur'an reminds us that there are angels assigned to every human being, observing and recording what we say and what we do. A casual sentence spoken in a moment of anger, a quiet act of kindness done when no one else is watching, even the intentions hidden within our hearts, nothing escapes this record. And when we pause to reflect on this, it forces us to rethink how we define significance in our daily lives. In the modern world, people often measure importance by visibility. If an action is seen by many people, it is considered meaningful. If it gains attention, recognition, or social approval, it feels valuable, but the Islamic world flips that perspective entirely. It teaches us that the most meaningful actions may be the ones that no human being ever sees. Think about this for a moment. A person might offer a sincere prayer in the quiet of the night when no one else is awake. Another person might forgive someone who hurt them deeply, choosing patience instead of revenge. Someone else might give charity privately, ensuring that their right hand gives while their left hand does not even know about it. In the eyes of society, these moments might appear small or invisible, but in the divine record, they carry immense weight. And the opposite is also true. Words that seem insignificant to us can have consequences far greater than we realize. A careless insult, a lie told for convenience, a moment of arrogance that humiliates someone else. These things may feel temporary in the moment, but they do not disappear. They remain recorded. This idea introduces a powerful form of self-awareness. It reminds us that our lives are not simply unfolding randomly. They are being documented with perfect justice. In fact, one of the most striking descriptions of the Day of Judgment in the Qur'an is the moment when people are presented with the record of their deeds. And when that record is opened, the person will look at it with shock and say something like, "What kind of record is this that leaves nothing small or large except that it has counted it?" That reaction reveals something about human nature. In this world, we constantly minimize our mistakes. We tell ourselves that certain actions are too small to matter. We justify certain behaviors because everyone else is doing them. But the divine record does not operate according to our personal excuses. It operates according to truth. And yet, there is something incredibly hopeful about this system as well. Because if every negative action is recorded, then every positive action is also preserved. Every sincere repentance, every good intention, every effort to improve ourselves, it all becomes part of that record. Nothing good is ever wasted. Even a smile offered to another person, even removing something harmful from a path, even a brief moment when a person remembers Allah in the middle of a busy day, these moments may seem insignificant in the flow of daily life, but they accumulate in ways we cannot imagine. The Day of Judgment will reveal the true value of these moments. What we considered small may appear enormous. What we thought was unimportant may become the very reason for our salvation. And this understanding transforms how we live. It encourages us to slow down and become conscious of our choices. It reminds us that integrity matters even when no one is watching. It pushes us to speak more carefully, act more thoughtfully, and treat others with greater kindness. Because the reality is simple but profound, we are writing the story of our eternal future with the actions we perform today. And one day that story will be read back to us in full detail. When we think about success in this world, most societies tend to define it in very similar ways. Success is usually measured through wealth, influence, status, and recognition. A person who accumulates financial power is considered successful. Someone who gains fame or authority is admired, and from a worldly perspective, these achievements can certainly have value. Islam does not deny the importance of working hard, building a stable life, or striving for excellence. But the Qur'an constantly reminds us that these measures of success are temporary and incomplete, because there is another moment coming, one moment that will redefine what success truly means. The Day of Judgment will reveal the reality behind every human life, and on that day, the standards that people used to judge one another in this world will no longer hold the same weight. Think about how quickly the reputation of a person can dominate our perception today. If someone has wealth, society often assumes they must be intelligent or capable. If someone has influence, people assume they must be important. Yet history has shown us again and again that worldly power does not necessarily reflect true virtue. There have been rulers with enormous authority who used that power to spread injustice. There have been wealthy individuals who had everything this world could offer yet lived without gratitude or compassion. And at the same time, there have been people with very little wealth or recognition who lived lives filled with sincerity, patience, and quiet devotion to Allah. The Day of Judgment will bring absolute clarity to these differences. On that day, the illusions of this world will disappear. Titles will disappear, status will disappear. The things that once made people feel superior to others will lose all meaning. What will remain is the reality of a person's faith, sincerity, and actions. The Qur'an describes scenes where people who once appeared powerful in this world will stand humbled, realizing that their achievements did not benefit them the way they expected. At the same time, individuals who were overlooked or underestimated may find themselves honored because of their sincerity and righteousness. This reversal is one of the most powerful lessons in Islamic teachings. It reminds us that the true scale of success is not determined by public opinion, but by divine judgment. The applause of people may feel satisfying in the moment, but it is temporary. What truly matters is how our lives appear in the sight of Allah. And this realization forces us to ask a difficult but necessary question: what are we truly striving for? Many people dedicate the majority of their energy to goals that only exist within this world. They work endlessly to accumulate more wealth, more recognition, more comfort. But if those achievements are not accompanied by faith, integrity, and gratitude, they cannot protect a person from the ultimate moment of accountability. Islam does not teach us to abandon ambition. Rather, it teaches us to redefine ambition. A believer should still strive for excellence in their career, their education, and their contributions to society. But at the same time, they remain aware that the most important success is the success that appears on the Day of Judgment. That awareness creates balance. It allows a person to pursue worldly goals without becoming enslaved by them. It reminds them that character matters more than reputation, sincerity matters more than popularity, and obedience to Allah matters more than the approval of people. When a person lives with this understanding, their priorities begin to shift. Acts of worship no longer feel like obligations, they feel like investments in something eternal. Kindness toward others becomes more meaningful because it carries consequences beyond this world. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this perspective is that it gives hope to every single person. Because in the sight of Allah, true success is not reserved for the rich or the famous. It is available to anyone who lives with sincerity, humility, and faith. The day of judgment will ultimately reveal what our lives were truly worth. And when that moment arrives, the only question that will matter is not how successful we appeared in the eyes of people, but whether we were successful in the sight of Allah. As we bring these reflections together, the illusion of endless time, the certainty of death, the signs unfolding around us, and the reality that every action is being recorded, we arrive at the most important question of all. What do we do with this knowledge? Because knowledge by itself does not transform a person. A person can listen to reminders about the hereafter for years and still continue living the same way. The real difference appears when awareness turns into action. One of the most dangerous habits of the human mind is the tendency to delay change. We tell ourselves that we will improve later. We convince ourselves that there will be a more convenient moment in the future to become serious about our relationship with Allah. And so a person might say, when things settle down in my life, I will focus more on my faith. When I get older, then I will become more committed. But this idea of the perfect moment is one of the greatest illusions that people live under. Life rarely becomes less busy. Responsibilities rarely become lighter. In fact, for most people, the longer life continues, the more complicated it becomes. New obligations appear, new distractions emerge, and suddenly years pass without the change that once felt so easy to promise. This is why the Qur'an and the teachings of Islam constantly emphasize the importance of acting now. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when circumstances become ideal. The present moment is the only moment that we truly possess. The past is gone and cannot be changed, and the future is uncertain and cannot be guaranteed. But this moment, this breath we are taking right now, is an opportunity. And what makes this opportunity so powerful is the concept of repentance. One of the most remarkable aspects of Islam is that no matter how far a person may feel from Allah, the door of repentance remains open. A person may carry years of mistakes, regrets, or sins, yet the moment they sincerely turn back to Allah, that relationship can begin to heal immediately. This is not simply a theological concept, it is a deeply psychological one as well, because human beings often feel trapped by their past. They think their previous actions define them permanently, but Islam teaches something profoundly hopeful. Your past does not have to define your future. What defines your future is the decision you make today. When a person sincerely turns back to Allah, seeks forgiveness, and begins making small but consistent changes, those steps carry immense value. A single sincere prayer can be the beginning of a completely new direction in life. A single moment of honest reflection can lead someone to rebuild their priorities. And this is why preparation for the Day of Judgment is not meant to feel overwhelming. Islam does not demand perfection from human beings. It asks for sincerity, effort, and humility. It asks us to recognize our weaknesses, seek forgiveness when we fall short, and continue striving to improve. A person does not need to transform their entire life overnight. Real change often begins with simple, consistent actions, guarding our prayers, being more mindful of our speech, increasing our charity, strengthening our connection with the Qur'an, and treating People with greater compassion, over time, these small steps reshape the heart, and when the heart begins to change, the entire direction of a person's life begins to shift. They start to see the world differently. Temporary distractions lose their hold, and the reality of the hereafter becomes clearer. Ultimately, preparing for the day of judgment is not about living in fear of the future. It is about living with awareness of purpose. Because the truth is that none of us knows when our story in this world will reach its final page. The only certainty we have is that one day it will. And when that moment arrives, we will not wish that we had spent more time chasing temporary things. We will wish that we had spent more time preparing for what truly lasts. So, the most powerful step any person can take is also the simplest one. Asterisk, asterisk, do not wait to begin becoming the person you know you should be, asterisk, asterisk.